Before we learn chords, the first thing we want to understand is the very basics of the musical alphabet. So basically, if you think of a regular alphabet, starting on A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, those are the first 7 letters of the alphabet, right? Well, in music, we use these 7 notes to make up a scale. And then it starts over after G, going to A, B, C, and so on. So we never play H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, any of those letters. The notes are designated to these 7 letters, and then they repeat after that. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if I think of A, starting over again at A, we call that an octave. So oct for 8. Octave. So from A to A, we have 1 octave. The 7 notes in the scale before that, up to the octave of A. Now in music, we also want to understand that we have 2 major key centers that songs fall under, which is major, or we have minor. Some people think of major as happy sounding, minor as sad sounding. I kind of think of it more like major's like sunny, nice bright sunny day. The minor is more like nighttime. It's like the moon, it's kind of dark out, so it's a darker sound. Then major is more bright sounding, is how I think of it. Now, even though that we have started with the letter A, this actually spells out a minor scale. So the scale for this would be A minor. Now the technical term, we could also call it Aeolian. But minor is really the common way to say this, A minor. Okay, so if we play A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then to A again, that's an A minor scale. Now, generally in music, we actually learn major scales first. It's kind of the first place to start from. So really what we're going to do is if we start on C and play 1 octave up from C, it will become a major scale. So if I write the musical alphabet again, starting from C, we will get C major. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then we start over at the octave. C, D, E, okay? So C becomes our octave. Between C and C, we have an octave. So this is C major. C major, from C to C, okay? So that is kind of the first scale that we usually learn on piano to understand where middle C is, and we play all the white notes at the bottom, all the bottom row notes. Those are all called natural notes. So there's no sharps or flats or any things like that. And so basically we play from C to C on a piano. Well, it's the same thing on a guitar. We just have a different way of playing the scale, but it's the same scale from C to C for C major. So if we look at our C major scale, what you'll notice is each note has a different scale degree or number within the scale. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 1 again, 2, 3. You could call that 8, and if you wanted to go up 8, 9, 10 and all that, but that's more if you're doing extended chords or chords with extension notes and things like that. But for right now, we're just thinking of this first octave really. So if you understand that a C major scale has 7 scale degrees before it starts over the octave, you'll also want to know that we actually build chords from scales. If we take the 1, 3, and 5 from a C major scale, that actually spells out a C major chord. Okay? So when you're thinking about chords, the first thing to understand is what the scale is, and then you want to understand that you are playing every other note in that scale. So we're playing 1, we're skipping over 2, we're playing 3, we're skipping over 4, and we're playing 5. Okay, so that's 1, 3, 5. So those notes would be C, E, and G. So that equals a C major chord. C, E, G. So before we even look at the shapes on guitar, we want to understand that we're playing these 3 notes to spell out a C major chord. Now, you could think of a D chord starting on 2 and do 2, 4, 6 and all that, but just right now, Make it really simple and just understand that 1, 3, 5 is the standard for spelling out a chord. In the key of C major, we have C, E, G. Now we'll learn more about the notes later and about how scale degrees work with chords and all that kind of stuff later, but right now I just want you to know the very basics. It is also important to understand that we have intervals in these chords. So we call it a major third interval from C to E, and then we also have a minor third from E to G, but most importantly, you want to understand it like this. So C to E, we call that M, capital M3, which stands for major third. Okay, so just bear with me for a second. I know we haven't gone into intervals yet, but I just want you to know this is called a third because this would be a second. You know, so we've gone to the third from the 1, so that's a third distance. Okay, major third. Now we could also think from E to G is a minor third, which it's like a third, it's just a smaller, like half step smaller. But what we really want to think and understand that this is what we call a perfect fifth. So it's very important to understand that this is the 5 and this is the 1. So when you think of chords, you want to think from the 1 to the 3 and the 1 to the 5. That's a much more effective way to think of the values of what's going on in the chord rather than stacking thirds. That can get really confusing when you start getting into chords with flat 5s and sharp 5s and you start stacking all these thirds. If you mess anything up, then it all collapses. So if you understand what's going on with the fifth, the structure is stronger and you can understand what's going on in the chord around it. So that's the way that I was taught to think about it in school, and I've always really liked that, is to conceive of a chord from 1 to 3 and also 1 to 5. So you really understand what the relation is to the original note, the C. Okay? So that's enough theory for right now. I just want to kind of show you some of those basics there. So now I'll get into the basic shapes on the chords for the guitar.